After a year together, she smirked and said, "I was just using you to make my ex jealous. He finally came back, so we're done." I didn't argue. I even helped her load the boxes into his car and slipped in a little gift she didn't notice. Screenshots of her messages about him. 2 weeks later, she showed up at my door crying that he'd left her. We were just sitting on the couch after dinner, watching some show I can't even remember, and she looked over at me with this weird, satisfied look on her face. After a year together, she just dropped it on me. "I was just using you to make my ex jealous. He finally came back, so we're done." Just like that, I didn't yell. I didn't even really feel surprised. It was more like I'd been hearing a rattling noise in my car for months and the engine finally died. It wasn't a shock, it just confirmed what I already knew deep down. Her ex, David, came up in conversation way too much. She was always cagey about who she was texting, tilting her phone away from me. I'd put the pieces together a long time ago, but I guess I was waiting for her to show her hand. I just didn't expect her to be so proud of it. "Okay," I said. "That's it. Just one word." She looked thrown by that. I think she was expecting a big scene, maybe some begging, something she could use as a final story to tell her friends. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. "So when's he coming to get you?" She blinked and the grin on her face tightened a little. She wasn't in control of the reaction, and it bothered her. "He'll be here in an hour. I've got to pack my stuff." "I'll help," I told her, getting up from the couch. And that's when the plan formed in my head. It wasn't some crazy complicated thing. It was simple, and she was going to help me do it. You see, Sarah was sloppy. She was so sure I was clueless that she'd leave her laptop open on the coffee table when she went to the bathroom. She'd leave her phone lying face up while she was in the kitchen. She was constantly messaging her best friend, Megan, and I saw it all. I wasn't trying to spy, I swear, but she made it impossible not to. A text would pop up on the screen, my name would be in it, and I'd see it out of the corner of my eye. So for the past few months, I'd been taking screenshots. I went into my office while she started throwing her clothes into boxes, not bothering to fold anything. I had a folder on my computer desktop. I just called it Stuff. Inside were dozens of pictures of her chats with Megan. There were the messages where she called David a pathetic loser for still being in love with her after she dumped him. There were the ones making fun of how he wasn't great in bed, with little jokes about his stamina that she clearly thought were hilarious. She mocked his new apartment, calling it a sad little shoebox and saying he probably couldn't afford anything better. But the real gems, the ones that made my stomach turn, were the messages where she laid out her whole plan. Use the nice, stable guy, that's me, to make David jealous enough to take her back. She had a whole timeline. She wrote, "Another 6 months with the boring guy should do it. David is almost at the breaking point." I printed everything. 22 pages of her own words, her own casual cruelty. I put them in a neat stack and slipped them into a plain brown envelope. I didn't even seal it. I wanted it to look like it was just some papers he'd left in his car. When I walked back into the living room, she was humming while taping up a box. She was happy, genuinely happy to be leaving me. I just grabbed a roll of packing tape and started sealing the boxes she'd filled. The silence in the apartment was heavy, but it wasn't awkward. It was just over. An hour later, a horn honked outside. She ran to the window like a kid hearing the ice cream truck. "He's here," she said, grabbing her purse. I picked up the first 2 boxes and headed for the door. "All right, let's get you moved out." David was leaning against a nice-looking car, much nicer than my beat-up truck. He gave me a hard look, trying to look tough. He was the guy who won, in his mind. I didn't care. I wasn't his problem. I was about to do him the biggest favor of his life. We made a few trips back and forth, loading her stuff into his trunk. Sarah was in full-on director mode, telling me to be careful with one box, telling David to shove another one further in. I just played the part of the helpful, compliant ex-boyfriend. On the last trip, I had the lightest box and the envelope tucked under my arm. While David was busy trying to get the last box to fit in his trunk, and Sarah had run back inside to do one last check for her phone charger, I made my move. I walked over to the driver's side door, which he'd left open. David had his back to me, focused on the trunk. I reached in and slid the envelope of papers into the driver's side sun visor. I pushed it up and it was hidden, but I knew he'd find it. It's automatic. The sun gets in your eyes on the drive home. You flip the visor down. It was a ticking time bomb, and the timer had started. I stepped away from the car just as Sarah came bouncing out of the building. She gave me one last look, a mix of pity and dismissal. No hard feelings, right? Nope, I said. Good luck with everything. She got in the car without another word, and they drove off. I didn't watch them go. I just went back inside my apartment and slid the deadbolt across. It was finally quiet. The next 2 days were all about reclaiming my space. I changed the sheets on the bed, threw out all her half-used toiletries from the bathroom, and rearranged the living room furniture back to the way I liked it. It felt good. The bomb went off 3 days later. I got a friend request on social media from David. I accepted, and a message came through immediately. Hey, I know this is weird, but can I call you? I need to thank you. I sent him my number, and my phone rang less than a minute later. Man, thank you, was the first thing he said. He sounded completely stunned. I found your gift yesterday. Sun was in my eyes on my way home from work. I pulled down the visor, and a ton of papers just fell all over my lap. I pulled over and read every single one. He told me he saw it all. The messages about him being pathetic, the jokes about his apartment, the crude comments about their past, the entire detailed plan to use me to get to him. He said he felt sick to his stomach. He walked inside his apartment, found Sarah unpacking her boxes and humming, and just tossed the papers on the table in front of her. He said she tried to deny it, of course. She said I was a psycho and that I had faked all of it to ruin her life. But he said the messages were so specific, so much in her voice, with details only she would know, that he knew they were real. Then she started crying. She said she only wrote those things because she was hurt and missed him so much. She tried to make it about him, saying he shouldn't believe some papers over her. But he said it wasn't just the insults. It was seeing how calculated and cold she was. He wasn't a person to her. He was an object, a prize to be won back to prove a point. He told her to pack her boxes back up. He said she started screaming then, saying he was ruining their second chance over some stupid messages. He told me he just pointed to the stack of papers and said, "The guy you called a pathetic loser is kicking you out of his sad little shoebox." He actually used her own words against her. He put her boxes in the hallway outside his apartment and told her to call someone to get them. He blocked her number right then and there. "She's not your problem anymore," I told him. "Nope, and I seriously owe you one," he said. "You saved me from a world of trouble." We ended the call on good terms. Two guys who had dodged the same bullet. I felt a sense of closure. The plan had worked perfectly. A few days of peace went by. I was starting to feel normal again. Then, the next wave hit. Sarah's best friend, Megan, started calling me from a blocked number. I didn't answer, so she left a furious voicemail. She called me a manipulative jerk for sabotaging Sarah's happiness. She said Sarah was a wreck, crying on her couch, and that it was all my fault. She finished by saying I needed to fix it. The idea that I was supposed to clean up a mess Sarah made with 2 different men was just insane. I deleted the message and blocked the number. Of course, that wasn't the end of it. The next escalation was the social media campaign. Megan and Sarah started posting all this vague stuff on their stories, things like, "Some men can't handle seeing a strong woman move on," and "Beware of the toxic ex who tries to ruin your future." They didn't name me directly, but it was obvious who they were talking about. A few of our mutual friends actually bought into it. One of them, a guy named Chris, who I sometimes played poker with, texted me and said he heard I'd been acting crazy and that I should just apologize to her and let it go. I didn't argue with him. I just sent him 3 screenshots. The one where Sarah called David pathetic, the one where she laughed about his shoebox apartment, and the one where she explicitly said, "I'm just using him to make David jealous." Chris texted back about 5 minutes later. "Wow, okay. Never mind. She's nuts. Sorry, man." That was the end of the smear campaign. Facts are stubborn things. Then came the money angle. I knew it was coming. A week after she left, I started getting texts from Megan's phone, but it was obviously Sarah writing them. The first one demanded half of the security deposit for my apartment. This was laughable. I'd lived in my place for 3 years before she moved in. She had never contributed a dime to the deposit. I just replied, "You were never on the lease. This is my apartment. There is no deposit of yours to return." The next one was a threat. She claimed she'd left an expensive necklace, a family heirloom that her grandmother had given her, in my apartment. She said if I didn't return it immediately, she was calling the cops to report me for theft. This was a dumb move on her part. I remembered her bragging to Megan in a text about selling that same necklace 6 months earlier to fund a weekend trip to Vegas. I had the screenshot for that too. I texted her the picture of her own message. "Just sold grandma's necklace, lol. Vegas, here we come." Underneath it, I wrote, "You sure you want to file a false police report? Lying to the police is a serious crime." Total silence after that. For about a week, I heard nothing. I started to think it was finally over. I was wrong. The desperation was just building. And when she couldn't get to me through friends or money, she went for the nuclear option. My family. I got a call from my sister, Laura. Her tone was worried. She said she had just gotten off the phone with Sarah. Sarah had called her, crying hysterically, telling her a completely made-up story about how I had a breakdown, that I had become controlling and abusive, and that I had thrown her out on the street for no reason. She was trying to poison my own family against me. I told her she was full of it, Laura said, which was a relief, but she was convincing. She mentioned that you had been acting erratically, and that she was worried about your mental state. What is going on? I was furious. Involving my family was a low blow, even for her. I sent Laura the same 3 screenshots I had sent to Chris. There was a long pause after she read them. Then she just said, "Oh wow, she's a piece of work. Don't worry, I'll handle this." Apparently, Laura called our mom and dad and a few of our cousins and told them the real story. The family circle was secured. Sarah's attempt to paint me as the villain to the people who knew me best had backfired spectacularly. All it did was make her look even more manipulative. 2 weeks to the day after she had walked out of my life with a smirk, my doorbell rang late at night. I checked the camera. It was Sarah, and she looked like she'd been through a war. She was pale, her eyes were swollen from crying, and she was just standing there in the rain. The confident, triumphant woman from 2 weeks ago was gone. In her place was a victim, a role she was born to play. I opened the door but left the security chain on. The second she saw me, she started sobbing. "I made a mistake," she cried. "A huge mistake. I was so stupid. David meant nothing. You were the one who was always there for me, the one who was good to me. I never should have left you. It was a good performance. A year ago, it would have worked. A year ago, I was the guy who avoided confrontation and always gave people the benefit of the doubt. But that guy was gone. Sarah had killed him. I miss you," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Please, can I just come home?" I let her question hang there in the hallway. I saw the hope in her eyes, the expectation that I would cave, that the nice guy she had taken for granted was still in there somewhere. And I watched that hope die as the seconds ticked by and I said nothing. "No, Sarah," I finally said. The word hit her like a slap. "What?" "This isn't your home," I told her. "And you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice, a very deliberate, planned-out choice. It just didn't work out the way you wanted." The tears stopped instantly. Her face hardened. "You planned this. You wanted him to see those messages. You ruined my life." "I just gave him some information he deserved to have," I said. "He made his own decision. Your plan was to use 2 different people as your personal stepping stones, and now you have no one to stand on. That's not my fault. That's on you." She just stared at me, speechless. She had run out of lies, run out of manipulations, run out of people to blame. "You're only here because your plan failed," I told her. "You don't want me. You want a place to land because you have nowhere else to go. But you're the one who burned the landing strip. Goodbye, Sarah." I closed the door on her shocked face and slid the deadbolt home. I could hear her start to yell, but I just walked away and put on some music. I didn't need to hear it. It was just noise.